Hello everyone and welcome back to Exotic Car Hacks. Well, first off, let me just say thank you so much to 2,000 plus members who have joined Exotic Car Hacks during this crazy Black Friday sale we had. It is so exciting to see so many of you committing to upping your game in the exotic cars world, but also committing to lowering your costs. So it's really good to have you. And the other thing I was going to talk to you about today is that I decided to buy a couple of new cars. But we're not going to talk about a review today. We're not going to take them out for a drive or anything. Instead, I'm going to introduce you to one specific car that I've had before and that I've decided to yet buy again. And the reason why I'm deciding to take that bet and how the car markets work and why I believe in this particular car from a longevity of values. So if you guessed that I bought another SF90, well, that's not accurate because I have had this car and I intend to keep it for quite some time, or maybe not. We'll talk about that next video. But what I did decide to buy again this time is an AMG GT Black Series. And this time in a Designo graphite matte paint, which has exposed carbon fiber and gloss, but matte paint all around. It's a very loaded version of the car. Remember, there were only very few options, such as the cross brace in the back in carbon, the matte paint being a cost option, and finally, the sound system, which is a pretty big option altogether. So the sound system is the more rare form that you don't see in a lot of these, like after trying to buy multiple and having owned like 4 or 5 of these, I can tell you the sound system is the rare one. So once you find the ones with the sound system for the right dollar, you just buy them. Usually the sticker is about 10K higher if they have the paint and the sound, which is not that bad, but it's just a good thing to understand that you're gonna get a higher sticker, so you're gonna pay less over sticker. Now, why did I choose to buy another one of these? And this time I did not pay sticker, I paid over sticker. So why did I do that? What was the worth of this car for me, and why did I choose to do that? So this is really important to understand because these cars have had their roller coaster ride, right? At some point, these, again, the sticker on these is mid threes, 320 to 350. And the other part to keep in mind with these is that obviously they were selling for 500 to 550 for quite some time. So the recent drop we've seen with most of the listings between 4 and 480 is pretty significant because, again, we saw this kind of come down. So why did this happen is going to be a really good lesson for the video here today and how we can kind of check ourselves out. So first off, tell me in the comments, what do you think about the spec? How exciting is this compared to my last one? My last one was silver. It had the exposed carbon, but it wasn't matte. This one is matte, has a much more Batman feel. We've added 20mm spacers, giving the car a much more aggressive stance. And I think that has been a must do. I wish I would have done it on my last one. It makes a world of a difference from a design standpoint, especially right here on the back side. Pretty exciting to see the fat tire kind of stick out. Gives the car a much more track focused look. So I love it this way. I think it works way better. And from a design standpoint, I like the matte black much, much better. I'm gonna show you the interior real quick. Come over here just so you can see it. There's nothing special on the inside. You'll see the carbon thing with the little iPad in the middle, carbon everything. These are pretty standard. You'll have these like little silver stripe, silver stitching, and then obviously the race seat, whatever. They're very common across the board, so this is nothing new. This is nothing like more exciting than the other one. It's just a different kind of design on the matte black and looks really, really good. This car is not, this is not PPF. This is basically matte paint. And while it looks matte black, it's like a matte graphite, but really cool car anyways. It looks really good in this color. But what I was saying about the dollars on these, which is just important to understand, is that when we're looking at these AMG GT Black Series, they had this up for a while, and again, I have argued that these were a really good investment. So the argument is, well, if they were a good investment, why have they fallen? So I want to walk you through something real quick. I'm going to take you in my office, and I'm kind of going to show you the depreciation chart on how this kind of works with this car and what we can expect in the future and why I've decided today to yet make another investment. What was the indicator that told me that I was in a good place, and why do I not care if I'm at the absolute rock bottom of buying this car? So let's go into my office and let's take a look at that. Okay, so we're taking a look here real quick at the AMG GT Black Series in terms of the graph, how it looks, why it goes down, why it goes up, etc. So there's a couple of things to take in consideration here about the car and what made me say originally it's a good investment. Remember, we're at the peak of a change in what is expected to come out in the future, right? And we know that the Black Series was a very limited production run for Mercedes of what they considered a track-focused version of their favorite cars, like first the CLK63, then the SL65, then the SLS, Black Series, and then certainly the AMG GT Black Series. Now, the one that has really pushed itself all the way up significantly is the SLS AMG Black Series, partially because of the Gullwing, the most respected and best version of the Gullwing, so it would make sense. But the second car that I think we should be looking at is specifically this AMG GT Black Series for a couple of reasons. One, it's the final Black Series that is going to be motor-based. So that's a pretty important thing to note. It's the last of the best. Secondly, it's the only Black Series that has a Nürburgring track record, which is, again, a very big deal. It's functional, it's usable, and it's praised. This is important. If a car is praised for its performance, it's going to do historically well because it has some kind of history or something it did well. So it does, and it will kind of hold on that regard that it is something good. Like the SL65 Black Series, trash. It was just a really bad car, but it was a really pretty car, just a really bad bet because it was an SL65 with a body kit. It didn't really do anything exciting. It was really bad to drive, so it didn't really hit there. But when we look at, for example, the SLS Black Series, it was a better version of something incredible already, and it held its purpose. And then the AMG GT Black Series, it did two things. It took the idea that basically the AMG GT was one of the best-selling Mercedes cars ever made, and in addition to that, it made it into a monster and hit a world record with it, which is very important. So the last of its kind, a world record, and based on one of the most powerful design series in the brand, right? So you have all of these things, and then you have your limited units, right around 1,000 units, a little bit more than that, just to be, for those of you that are freaking Nazis out there, like we're talking about just around that number. So I know they're not numbered. I know that. I'm just saying. So we're looking at the dollar, very well priced, Huracan-based money, Performante money, Technica money, and yet record, right? And not as mass-produced as these other cars. So what did we see happen? We saw as soon as the car came out, basically, within its first year, it got up to 550K, right? So this is the MSRP, it basically went up. So we know this. Whenever a car is in high demand and is in low supply, it typically shoots up. We see this with Ferrari. But when a car is new, what happens? So a lot of people, their basis in the car is 330K. So obviously 200K here plus 200K, very attractive to get rid of the car, right? You sell the car, you almost make the same price as the car. Of course, you're going to get rid of the car. So what happens at 550K is that you're going to get a decline here, and you're going to get cars in the thing because this is a plus supply mode. This happens with all cars. So people get excited for this number right here, and then more supply enters the market, the number starts to fall down. So basically the car gets now to 475K to 500K. So yes, it drops immediately because while the supply is new, you know, it's coming up. Now, why does it come to 475, 500? Why doesn't it keep going up? Because more cars are being produced. They're still being pulled out of the factory at this low basis. But now as they're going up, people are actually purchasing these cars and putting them in their garage for that uptake. So it's getting people more excited to basically sell their car. More cars are coming. So that supply keeps going. When that supply keeps going, obviously that price keeps coming down because people are competitive. What if I don't get 200? So now we're at a plus 100 situation. So the car goes down here now to 450. Remember, they have a 330. So now we have about 100K over situation. Now, instead of looking at it as $100,000 being the issue, we have something very common. And this is what we call kind of the equilibrium of the market. When something is very hot, right? And yet people can't get it and they know they're unlikely to get it because it's a limited production, the market usually sees a plus 30%. So this is historically across the board. So plus 30% puts that 330 right at 450, right? And that is now, you see it's a trending down pattern. It's important to see. But something pretty interesting happens. At 200K over, it's limited for those people that really are like kind of like willing to take a chance. At 100K over, at the 30%, the regular market starts to play again. But then here's something interesting that happens. Because the regular market starts to play again, they take these cars, and again, now the curve starts to stabilize again. Just now we're going like plus 10%, right around 400K. Now, 10% is a very reasonable premium people are willing to pay because we're talking about 40, 50K over, so we're talking about right around 400K. Now, this is, again, an average. Some cars will sell at 420, some cars will sell at 380. BAT cleared a car. I think data on BAT was like 390K was, including fees, was the dollar a car cleared there. So this is what we call, usually BAT is going to be a little bit lower. It's an auction site, so you're going to see that. So again, we're starting to see values here stabilize again, but we're talking about a 10, 20% upstake, right? Like depending on the MSRP on the car that you're particularly looking at. So we're talking talking about a 10-20% range right here, and then we're seeing something pretty incredible happen. So more people are willing to play at this plus 10 level than they are at the 30 or 40 or 50% up. So what does happen is now, listen, it's going to be like a year or two later. Forgive me for this bad graphic here. I'm just going to clear this so it doesn't confuse you. We're going to say that right here we're at year 3, then we're going to year 5, and year 10. We'll just do it this way, sorry, because my graph's getting a little bit big. I'm not doing this on a computer, right? So, you know, around the 3-year mark, some pretty incredible things happen. The amount of units, obviously, is nothing is getting pumped out of the factory anymore, because usually you have about a 16-month window where a limited edition run happens and all the cars are out. So now about the 3-year mark, 2 pretty incredible things happen. The supply starts to significantly dry up, because people have taken their bets, but also remember, there is now basis in these cars, now that they're out of circulation, no longer at 330, but now at 475, 500, 450, and 400. So now you have supply at those rates. So what happens is, here's the reverse of how the bar starts to go up. So you remove these low cars down, right? You take this bat, it's sold. So it's not going to come back to market lower than it has. Instead, what's going to happen is it's going to go into the market again down the road. But remember, since no new supply is coming in, each unit that comes up now plays the market back up. Like you might have a unit at 400, now a unit at 410, you know, a unit at 450, and blah, 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 blah. The main thing, and I'm going to cross these right here, I'm going to do it right here so it doesn't get confusing. So it pushes itself up by the 5-year mark. And what happens is the basis for these cars starts to come back, basically resettling itself, so people are basically breaking even years later. So it still makes it a good investment. It's basically the dip that occurs when a new car happens. Because of these things, here's a speculation, or here's where I believe that this car within its 5 to 10 year run, so it started in 21, so in 2026, and then in basically 2028 to 2030, is going to become a very sought after collector car, because its basis is there, but people's basis is usually higher. In addition to that, it's already seen its curve moving in this direction. And so now we're going to start seeing, as supply disappears, more values coming. So there's 2 arguments here that people have made. One of them is the McLaren SLR, the Mercedes SLR, which was also fit into the same qualifications as these, but certainly didn't pull up with the same level as some other cars. So it didn't pull up till later. So this is argument 1. It takes much longer for that to happen. So perhaps you're wrong, PJ, so on and so forth, because it took about 11 years for this car to basically find its footing in terms of becoming a collector car. So that's one reality right there. And something else that's really interesting here is that with that particular car, there were other cars at that time that came out that were really unique, like the Courier GT and the Ford GT, and those cars pulled ahead much faster, pulling this one up. So the argument here becomes, is the AMG GT Black Series like a Ford GT and a Courier GT, or is it like the McLaren SLR and it'll drag its feet until later? We know that historically we're in a changing time, and we know these cars are going to become rarer, rarer, and rarer, and more exciting to own. So the real question is, will it be an incredible investment in 5 years or 10 years? But I'm pretty willing to bet that if we're looking at the way dollars transact on collector-based cars and how these values are set, I'm pretty sure that by the 10-year mark, we are going to see what we call about a 250% increase over MSRP, which means that if you take 330 as an example and you time it by 2.5, right, you'll have roughly about 6, you'll have about 750 to 800. And in that range of dollar, and that's where I believe by between 26 and 2030, we're going to see values at roughly between 750 and 800K. Now, there's one other car that specifically followed this very same model, but failed very hard based on the fact that we didn't have the economy going for it, and it also didn't have this whole ideology that the world was ending, etc. People weren't looking at cars in the same way. Cars have become very collectible in the mass market over the last 2 years because the mass market got a taste of it. But here's the other car that we've been looking at as kind of comparing, the LFA. While the product was flawed, the collectability happened after the fact, and it kind of followed the same model. So I'm following the same model. The only thing that changes on this particular car and those things is, one, the LFA was much lower numbered, but it was also a different time. There were less players. And the other thing to consider too that's really important in these things, these were all, the LFA was very iconic for Lexus. This car is very iconic for Mercedes. because of its record. So we have all of this, and we have a future that's looking very different. And I believe that these cars are going to do historically very well within their 10-year span. That's how long it takes for a car to basically become a well-known collector or not. We saw this happen in Ford GT around 2015 when the cars were 2005, so on and so forth. So that is my analysis on the AMG GT Black Series. If you haven't picked one up, obviously you can make that personal decision for yourself. And again, don't forget, this is kind of the ideology between what is Exotic Car Hacks, analyzing the markets, looking at that. A lot of people think at Exotic Car Hacks, we're just teaching people how to buy their first exotic in just 90 days because they're new and they don't understand how exotics work. But a big part of it is that we are the leading community and the only community really, because if you consider our competitors' communities with their 100 people and their groups versus our 20,000 members and 12,000 active members in our Facebook group on the daily, we have a real community of real exotic car owners and buyers who are analyzing the market just like this and talking and having these discussions. It is not only helping them become better at forecasting markets, but more importantly, it is also helping them lower their cost of ownerships by 80% by using such data. If you want to learn more, again, you can take the free training in the description, or you don't have to take the free training. You're ready to join Exotic Car Hacks. You can click the link in the description as well and just join us, because it just makes sense, especially if you are an exotic car owner or have always wanted one. It makes sense to get exposed to this type of information. So I'll catch you next time on another Exotic Car Hacks video.